Hey guys, my name is Dice Rollin'. Today we're going to be taking a look at one of the many iterations of Washington Irving's classic short story. Sleepy Hollow was written by Kevin Yeager and Andrew Kevin Walker. It was directed by Tim Burton and was released on November 19th, 1999. It received primarily positive reviews from audiences and critics alike, who enjoyed the performances, tone, effects, and music of the film. Sleepy Hollow is the story of a village by the same name. There have been a series of decapitation murders, which incites New York Constable Ichabod Crane's arrival to investigate them. He quickly becomes immersed in the local legend of the Headless Horseman, and must deduce whether or not a vengeful ghost is the murderer. So without further ado, this is my review of Sleepy Hollow. The movie starts off by reminding you that this was made by Tim Burton, which is followed by our first beheading. It does rather suck when that happens to your Uber. We're then taken to New York, where we meet Ichabod Crane, played by Johnny Depp. Ichabod is struggling to get his point across that in order to properly solve crimes, the city of New York can't rely on the same medieval style of dungeons and torture that it currently is. However, the High Constable and Burgomaster, played by Alan Armstrong and the late Sir Christopher Lee, aren't inclined to agree. The Burgomaster has a plan though. He's sending Ichabod to Sleepy Hollow to investigate the recent beheadings, and to bring the murderer back to New York for justice to be served. So, after a 2-day trip, Ichabod arrives in the village where there seems to be a party going on. Cause nothing rouses a festive event quicker than a couple heads being chopped off. I guess it wasn't far off from the Victorian era. Here, Ichabod meets Katrina Van Tassel, played by Christina Ricci. He also meets Brom Van Brunt, played by Casper Van Dien. Well, maybe meet is too strong a word.
You need some manners.
The host of the party, Katrina's father, Baltus Van Tassel, played by Michael Gambon, shows up with his wife, played by Miranda Richardson. Once Ichabod is shown to his room, he joins Van Tassel and other important members of Sleepy Hollow. Dr. Lancaster, played by Ian McDiarmid, you know.
Do it.
Reverend Steenwick, played by Jeffrey Jones, which is kind of ironic that he's playing that role, I'm just saying. Magistrate Phillips, played by the late Richard Griffiths, and Notary Hardenbrook, played by the late Michael Gow. With introductions out of the way, Ichabod begins his work by recounting the victims of the recent murders, father and son Peter and Dirk Van Garrett, as well as the widow Emily Winship. However, the group of men provide some details that Ichabod's superiors left out, like how the heads of these victims had not been found, and that they suspect this is the work of a Hessian mercenary, otherwise known as the Headless Horseman, played by Christopher Walken. He was known for his vicious and bloodthirsty nature in battle, where he often cut off the heads of his enemies. He was eventually killed 20 years ago in the western woods, where his decapitated body was buried. Naturally, this makes said woods haunted as fuck, and for whatever reason, it seems that the Headless Horseman wants to seek revenge now. Despite the fact that he is now shitting his britches, Ichabod insists that whoever is doing this has to be an ordinary man, and he's going to find him out. Let's hope so, because that night there's another beheading. This time it's Jonathan Masbeth, played by Mark Spalding. Ichabod arrives with the others to have a look at the body, which unfortunately doesn't provide much in the way of answers. Instead, it just seems to raise more questions. Doesn't exactly ease the superstitious tension either. During his father's funeral, young Masbeth, played by Mark Pickering, offers to help Ichabod and to avenge Jonathan's death. Phillips comes to Ichabod with some new information though. Apparently, Masbeth wasn't the 4th victim, but the 5th. So Ichabod takes the remaining Masbeth up on his offer, as there are graves to be dug up for inspection. What he learns through some post-mortem surgery is this.
The widow Winship was with child.
Well, now we're just into soap opera territory. Speaking of drama, Ichabod has some bigger problems on his hands that evening. As it turns out, this was a prank performed by Brom. I guess the trauma of this reawakens some traumatic memories from Ichabod's childhood that wake him from his sleep. Katrina seems to be up at this hour too, reading some of her deceased mother's books. One such book on spells and charms she gives to Ichabod as a form of protection. The following day, Katrina takes Ichabod to visit what's left of the cabin that she and her parents lived in before her father became wealthy. There we get a little bonding between the two of them. Back in Sleepy Hollow, Magistrate Phillips is doing exactly what a person shouldn't do when murders are prevalent, leaving town. But Ichabod heads him off and insists he tell him who the father father of Widow Winship's unborn child is, as perhaps this is who killed her. Phillips attempts to tell him, once again, that the Headless Horseman is the one who killed her, as well as the others. Naturally, Ichabod still doesn't believe this. However, there is something that will change his mind. So now Ichabod's like, holy shit, the Headless Horseman is real. And Baltus is like, yeah. Another flashback of young Ichabod, played by Sam Fior, and his mother, played by Lisa Marie. And Ichabod decides that he won't be leaving back to New York like everyone thought. Instead, he and Masbeth venture into the Western Wood, and come across the Crone of the Woods, also played by Miranda Richardson. Using some witchery, she pulls a ray gun and allows possession of her body by, well, whatever the hell this is, tells Ichabod where to go to find the Headless Horseman's burial place. Don't need to tell Ichabod twice. On the way, it's discovered that Katrina has joined them, seeing as everyone else in Sleepy Hollow is ballless. And so they come upon the Tree of the Dead, aptly named. What's more is, just as the crone said, the Headless Horseman is buried here. Well, most of him. The Hessian rises once again, and this time goes after the town midwife, Beth, her husband, and their son, Thomas, played by Claire Skinner, Stephen Waddington, and Sean Steffens. However, Brom is there with his rifle when the Headless Horseman emerges. Unfortunately, bullets don't mean shit to someone without a head. Even with Ichabod's help, Brom doesn't fare too well. Ichabod is down for the count for now, but he does manage to give some information on the Hessian before he passes out. He doesn't kill at random, and whoever has his skull is controlling him, thus sending him out to kill specific people. We also get an explanation for the flashbacks that Ichabod has been having. His father killed his mother when he was a child, because he believed that she was a witch, essentially. So killing her to save her soul was better than letting her live in sin. This is why we have Mari now. With Ichabod recovered, for the most part, he continues his sleuthing by going over the previous victims. Visiting Notary Hardenbrook, Ichabod and Masbeth discover Masbeth's father's satchel, which contains the last will of Van Garrett, as well as a marriage certificate. Apparently, he left everything to the widow Winship, whom he had married secretly, with all the official men who had been killed having a hand in this. Now that just leaves who could stand to gain from the demise of the Van Garretts and Winship.
None other than Van Garrett's next of kin, Baltus Van Tassel.
Returning to his room, it's discovered that someone has placed the evil eye on him. That or someone got a little happy with the chalk drawings, I don't know. That evening, Ichabod and Masbeth follow a cloaked figure out into the woods. This figure happens to be Lady Van Tassel, having an affair with someone. Though perhaps unsettling, this doesn't yield the result that Ichabod was hoping for. Worse yet, the Van Garrett will and certificate are gone from his desk, with Katrina having burned them. She's not terribly pleased that things are pointing to Ichabod accusing her father. Ichabod can't ignore the indications and clues of such, so they have a falling out. Oh, and Lady Van Tassel knows that Ichabod knows, so things just keep getting more and more awkward. With Hardenbrook having committed suicide, a town meeting is called, and part of the subject is disdain towards Ichabod's continued presence in Sleepy Hollow. Let's make this night worse, shall we? Panic ensues as everyone hides within the church from the Headless Horseman. Steenwick wants to throw Baltus out to save the rest of them, but Ichabod points out that the Hessian can't enter because this is holy ground. That's alright, enough lives are in danger without the horseman in here. Making the horseman's job really easy here. Naturally, Baltus is harpooned through the window and beheaded like so many before him. Among the chaos, Ichabod finds that it was Katrina who had drawn the sigil under his bed. Ichabod makes a decision to leave Sleepy Hollow given that all of his suspects are dead. But on the way out, something catches his eye. The corpse assumed to be Lady Van Tassel has a cut on her hand, just like she had before her death. However, this cut was made after death. Yes, Lady Van Tassel, or Archer, is alive and well, and has summoned the Headless Horseman one last time to kill Katrina. Why? Because she and her family were the ones who lived in the cottage that Katrina had grown up in. She, her mother, and her sister were evicted by Van Garrett after her father's death. While living in the woods, she and her sister saw the Hessian end his death. She essentially sold her soul in exchange for him to rise from his grave and seek vengeance on her part. Ichabod arrives in time to try to evade the horsemen once again, but even blowing up the windmill with the horsemen inside isn't enough to stop him. Ichabod, Mazbeth, and Katrina haul ass into the woods with the horsemen on their asses. One hell of a horse and carriage chase scene later, and they arrive at the Tree of the Dead, but so does Lady Van Tassel. This man has been stabbed, dragged quite literally through the dirt, and now shot. But bless him, he ain't down yet. With the horseman prepared to kill Katrina, Ichabod grabs the skull and returns it to him. Another waking nightmare. Thank you very much. Now that the horseman looks, well, I can't say less scary, he takes Lady Van Tassel to hell with him. With the evil defeated, Ichabod, Katrina, and Mazbeth return to New York in time for the turn of the century. And with that, the credits roll. It goes without saying that The Legend of Sleepy Hollow is a classic horror, Halloween, and ghost story. There have been a number of adaptations and remakes and such over the years. It's similar to A Christmas Carol in that way. While I have neither read the original story by Washington Irving or seen all of the other movies about it, I feel that this version of Sleepy Hollow is quite good. It's not totally faithful to the book, of course, but it expands upon the story and adds elements to it that make it interesting and unique. Like the whole mystery portion of the storyline. I can understand if this movie would throw someone off, compared to other adaptations, but it still pulls you into this sort of alternate world. There are moments of genuine creepiness and scares throughout, but jump scaring you isn't the plot's primary focus. The acting work is quite good, with some exceptions of silliness, but I found these moments to come across as wholly intentional. Like the actors were aware of the story and tone of it, enough to know that they could have some fun with their characters and scenarios, to present reactions and responses to the situations they were in with the proper dose of humor. There are also times where it can come across as over the top. This is a movie where Christopher Walken plays the Headless Horseman who does not have a word of dialogue and looks like this. What did you expect? Mr. Walken yelled incoherently while slicing heads, so that Nick Cage could be totally mute while curb stomping animatronics. In general, I think everyone did well. This isn't a super serious film, and everyone involved knew that, so they played into it. Are there some shallow characters? Sure, I didn't necessarily find any of them to be painful to endure, or to detract from the story too severely though. There are a ton of familiar faces throughout, and that in itself is a cool element of Sleepy Hollow. While Johnny Depp himself has stated that he isn't fond of his performance as Ichabod Crane, I am. I liked his portrayal of the character. I enjoyed pretty much everyone's portrayals. Even... The atmosphere and settings here are... This is classic Tim Burton. And while I can't exactly agree with some of his points of view, I can appreciate his eye for art and designs. Both the atmosphere and settings are practically characters in themselves. Everything is moody and brooding, yet oddly beautiful to take in. There's an ethereal and ghostly quality to things. It was all obviously painstakingly created to give just the right kind of vibe for each scene and place. Alright, let's talk about the effects. Everything practical looks nice. The bodies, the heads, the wounds, the Hessian, all of that was nicely crafted. The CGI work on the horseman, while he remained headless, was seamless too. However, yeah, that's gotten a lot of ridicule, and I can't say it doesn't deserve it. So, Danny Elfman created the score for this movie. Do I need to say any more? I think a majority of us can agree that at least in some way, Mr. Elfman has been holding up Burton's career single-handedly, and that's why this ginger man is ripped. Once again, Danny Elfman brought another level of atmosphere to a movie, with his composition work, distinct from other Tim Burton films, and yet you know within a few seconds of hearing the scoring exactly who made this. It's all whimsical and delightfully strange, but it's also unsettling and threatening when it needs to be. With all that being said, I'm giving Sleepy Hollow 8.5 out of 10 bloody thumbs up. This is by no means the best adaptation of Sleepy Hollow and Ichabod Crane, but it's enjoyable nonetheless. It's creative and endearing despite its flaws. I can say without hesitation that it's my favorite Sleepy Hollow movie thus far. The mystery portion of the film was the most interesting, aside from the vengeful ghost portion, though I did have trouble getting into the love plot between Ichabod and Katrina. It felt a tad rushed and lacking in depth, but still better than Twilight. This isn't the strongest of Burton's works, but it isn't the weakest either. It can still be enjoyed if you suspend a certain amount of disbelief, and don't analyze it too closely. I would recommend Sleepy Hollow to fans of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, classic ghost story enthusiasts, people who love a horror movie that oozes with atmosphere, and of course, Johnny Depp fans. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like to let me know. Don't forget to leave a comment down below telling me what you think about this movie. And if you have any suggestions for horror movies you would like to see me review in the future. You can support the channel through my Patreon, where you would get exclusive and early access to videos like this. Also, don't forget to share this video to help the channel grow, and subscribe for more videos like this. See you later.
It is truth, but truth is not always appearance.